So what I like to do whenever I'm doing combat strikes, I like to start from here, because this is going to be the position that you'd be able to do any of your blocks, or the side, high, low, whatever it is, and then be able to follow on with a quick follow on. So what I like to do is I like to throw one side over. That way I don't accidentally hit myself in the head as I do this, and I turn my wrist and I strike. When I strike through, I come to this side and I let it bounce off, and I know where I'm going to be able to catch it at. So I'm here and I just catch it right here. Go back to the other side and I let it bounce off my body, and then it comes right back into my hand. So I could block, strike, and then I can come right back here and get ready for another block, strike, block, strike, block, strike. That just allows me to know where the chuck is afterwards, and I can get a good, nice hard strike. And I could go with a forehand strike, or I could go with a backhand strike. If I go with the backhand strike, I tend to follow it on with a forehand strike so that I can get back to this position. So that's one of the things that I like to do as far as combat strikes. Whenever I spar, I definitely use these a lot more, because they're just quick and you can counter on with them really fast. Alright, now I'm going to go over how to actually strike something. So, when we're actually striking something, the big thing is follow through. So with follow through, it's going to be all the way through, and it's when I turn my wrist over as well. So a lot of the times when you're just practicing in the air, you turn your wrist over right in the front. That's when we call it, breaking the wrist here, and then the wrist turns over. And whenever we're doing it in the air, we do it to the front. But whenever you're striking something, you're going to need to do that halfway past the strike. So I like to think of a 180 degree angle, starting from here all the way through. At 50% of the strike, right here, so here's my 180, 50% of the strike, that's when I make contact. 75% of the strike, that's when I turn the wrist over. If I turn the wrist over at 50% right when I'm making contact, I'm going to get hit by the ricochet. So the way that works, so if I'm doing, say, a front strike, as I'm coming out for that front strike, boom, if I turn my wrist, well, as soon as I make contact, this side of the stick, it wants to come right back at me. So when I'm following through, I go through here, and then I can turn my wrist, and enough of the power from the ricochet has been diminished at that point that I can turn the wrist safely. But if I hit something and I turn it right away, look how close. I'm going to have it right here. I'm going to have it straight up, but it's going to be signifying that it's hitting something right here. As I turn my wrist over, it gets it closer to me, and these essentially will clap on the back of my hand, and this hurts a lot. I've done it a lot when I was training and figuring out how to strike stuff. Boom. So if I turn it over 50%, boom, this is what's going to happen every time. So if I follow through, notice the wrist hasn't turned over. At this point, it's already continuing the motion. So instead of when I'm closing it, I can turn my hand a big amount, and it doesn't get me that close to it if I'm here. But if I'm here, it's going to turn it, because that ricochet hits hard, it's going to turn it and it's going to clap. Here, it's going to keep a good size angle in between us, and then I can follow on and allow it to hit myself and come through. So whenever you're striking something, you need to go 75% through before you actually turn the wrist over, or else you're going to end up hitting yourself. So when you're learning to strike, though, if you notice that first strike, I just barely glanced it. That's actually one of the methods for learning how to strike with the nunchuck. So I took this from Atienza Kali. The technique is called skimming. So with skimming, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off first at a distance where I'm not going to hit it. Just like this. I'm going to practice. I can practice both sides if I'd like. And then I slowly get a little bit closer to where I just barely make contact. I'm making contact with maybe an inch. And I'm finding my distance. And obviously, with nunchucks, it depends on how you're holding it. If I'm holding it here at the bottom, well, I can make contact from a much farther distance. I like to hold in a middle grip, so that's just my normal control. That's where I go back to. It's most common for me. That's what I like to use. So I try to figure out, hey, where can I just barely touch it? And then I get in closer. Boom. At a certain point, you're not going to be able to strike anymore. If I'm too close right here to right here, the ricochet is going to be too much. I'm not going to have enough control, and it's not going to be a strong strike anyways. Just think of physics. We have the big circular motion. the fastest part is going to be here. If I'm hitting here, at this point, I'm not really even doing enough of a strike for it to warrant me doing it. Chances are it's going to just get entangled with them, and they're going to grab it, and then we're going to be in a grappling match, and we don't want that. So we want to be able to keep our distance, using your footwork, whatever you need to keep your distance. When you're making contact, you really only want to make contact with, I'd say, about a third to a half of the nunchuck at most. But I'd say about a third, right about here. That's the distance that you want to actually have hitting. So again, when we start off practicing, we start off far enough away, and we're not going to hit it. Then we get a little bit closer, and we make small amounts of contact. When you're doing this, just do it light and follow through. Remember, as I follow through, here is where I turn the hand over, or here is where I turn the hand over. If I turn it over too early, that's going to happen. I'm going to end up getting hit right in the back of the hand. So follow through, every time. Start off slow, without power, going all the way through each strike. If you notice you're getting hit too much, back up. Also, when you're practicing this for the first time, I recommend wearing MMA gloves or hockey gloves or lacrosse gloves are really good. Something like that, so that when you get hit, not if you get hit, when you get hit, it'll be protected. When you're first learning this, you're probably going to get hit. So wear gloves or use foam nunchucks, use something that's going to be safe for you. Now, when you're practicing strikes, you can practice from all different angles, coming down, here, off to the side. But one thing I'm going to let you know now, don't strike upwards. Don't strike upwards. It's not good. You can arc it upwards and then end it coming down. That's fine. But do not strike straight up. What's going to happen is you're going to hit yourself in the face. So you might hit yourself in the hand if you're lucky. But I know personally, I hit myself in the face. It's not fun. And I'll show you exactly why. So when you're going up here, what happens is this is going to swing back in here. And if I was able to stop my entire swing out here, well, then I have enough space. I'm not going to get hit. But when you start throwing power, what's naturally going to happen is your arm is going to come back because, you know, this is where we throw everything from. This is where it comes back from. So if I throw that strike, boom, my hand's going to come in. So as it's coming in, I make contact, boom, and it's going to hit my head on that way back in, just like that. You know, sometimes it might hit your hand, sometimes it might miss your face, but it's not worth it. You're not going to get enough power behind any upward strike to make a difference. Chances are you're probably not even going to be able to hit where you want. With an upward strike, we would want to hit to the chin. Chances are you're going to hit here anyways, just based off of how the human body is. So don't do upward strikes. They don't turn out too well for you. If you want to test this theory, I highly recommend using foam nunchucks and wearing a pair of safety goggles, or even something such as a fencing mask. Something like that, so that when you get hit in the face, you don't get injured. It's not a fun thing to do. So, recap, what I like to do, my normal combat strikes are from here. I pass over, and I bring it around, just like this. And I catch it off the rebound of my own body. Striking, whenever we're first learning to strike a target, do the skimming method, so don't quite touch it, and then get a little bit closer. Start figuring out your distance, and making sure that as we strike, we go, here's where we make contact, we go halfway through, past that, before we actually turn it over and let it rebound. Don't do it early, or you're going to end up hitting yourself. And power doesn't make much of a difference when we're doing this. I recommend starting off slow, so if you do hit yourself, you're not going to hurt yourself. But whenever you start getting better, you can start really cracking on this. And so long as you have that follow through. When you put in power, though, the ricochet comes back faster. So the hand cannot stop. You can't pause. When I teach people this and they hit themselves, it's almost always because as they strike, they hit the target and they pause for a split second. If they pause, they get hit. So you have to follow through and you have to break the wrist 75% of the way through the strike.